Hi everyone, I'm back with another lesson about telling time and clocks. So today we're going to talk about our analog clock again. So in our analog clock, we're going to review the different parts before we go further with the lesson. We have our hour hand, which is shorter. Then we have our minute hand, and that's longer. And then we have the face of the clock. Now, does anyone notice these big numbers on the analog clock? Now, we have some big numbers right here. We also have, if you look closely, some smaller numbers, but we're not going to focus on those numbers right now. We're only going to focus on those big numbers on our analog clock. So we have these big numbers on our analog clock. We have a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, a 10, 11, and a 12. Now, these big numbers on the analog clock are going to tell us what hour we are in. So whenever we think about the big numbers on our analog clock, always think about the hour. These numbers are always going to tell you what hour we are in. And it's very important that you memorize how these numbers look on the analog clock, because with any analog clock, these big numbers will always be the same. They'll always be in the same position as they are right now. So let's review again. We have the 12, the 1, the 2, count along with me, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7, the 8, the 9, the 10, the 11, and the 12. Now, the easiest way to remember the order of these big numbers on our analog clock is that the top of the analog clock will always have the 12. No matter what analog clock you look at, it will always have a 12 on the top and like in the middle. It's kind of like in the middle and it's on the top. After that 12, we're always going to start with the 1, 2, 3. And all you have to do is count all the way to 12. And that's the correct order. So remember, the 12 is always the one up top in the middle. Then we start counting by 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then back up to the 12. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to create your own analog clock at home, or you can use the document that I posted on Google Classroom. That clock will look like this. It'll have an hour hand and a minute hand for you to glue on your clock, and then it will have the different squares, and you're going to have to fill in the squares with those big numbers that we just reviewed. Now remember, the big numbers on an analog clock will always tell you what hour we are in. So I want everyone to get their clock out, their blank clock, and pause the video here if you need to go get your blank clock or create one, because we're going to be filling in these blank squares with the correct numbers. Now, I'm gonna start you off and we're gonna do the first one together. Now, the first number I want you to write on your analog clock is the number 12. And remember, we're always going to start off with this number and it'll go up top on the middle. So I'm gonna write the number 12 on my analog clock. Now, who can tell me what number comes next? I want you to say it out loud right now. So if you set the number 1, that is correct. After you put the 12, we start counting from 1. So I'm going to put a number 1 here on my analog clock. Now we're going to keep going down in this direction. We're not going to go backwards when we're filling out our clock. But remember, you're going to put the 12 first, and then you're going to start with the 1. And remember, we have to count all the way back up to 12. Now, after our 1, what goes next? What is the next number on our analog clock? Say it out loud right now. Now, if you said the number 2, you are correct. The number 2 goes after the 1. Now, what number goes next on our analog clock? If you said the number 3, you are correct. The number 3 goes next on our analog clock. Now, what number goes after the number 3? If you said 4, you are correct. That number goes after 3 on our analog clock. Now, I want you to fill out these 2 squares by yourselves and then come back when you're ready for the correct answer. You can pause the video now if you need to. So, the next numbers on our analog clock will be the numbers 5 and 6. Now, a good way to remember where the 6 goes, it's also in line with the 12. It's also in the middle, but it's in the bottom. Now, so after 4, we had 5 and 6. Now, what number comes after the 6 on our analog clock? Please say the answer out loud right now. So if you said 7, you are correct. So 7 is the number that goes next on our analog clock. Now, these blanks, I want you to do them by yourselves. I want you to pause the video right now and complete your analog clock. And then press play when you're ready to hear the correct answer. So the next numbers on the analog clock will be, they'll be 8, 9, 10, 11, and then we're back up to 12. So let's review the numbers on our analog clock. Remember, the first number I always want you to write on your analog clock is that 12 down the middle. And then you're always going to start with 1, and you're always going to count and go around until you reach 12 again. So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so these are the numbers on our analog clock. And I want you to make sure that you can memorize the numbers on our analog clock. That's all for our lesson today. And on our next lesson, we're going to be reviewing how to tell time to the hour. So stay tuned, guys. Bye.